Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Miller. This is the What Drives You podcast, where I curate and question the latest and greatest personal growth methodologies to help reveal the big ideas so you can make those shifts in your life as you grow and evolve and enjoy the pursuit even more than the destination. In this episode, 4 steps to clarify your zone of genius and realize that your purpose is not limited to one thing. I mean, we would all like to know the one assignment, right? The mission, the purpose that was just for us, that we were made for. We'd like a stone tablet to fall out of the sky that said, hey, this is what you're here to do. Go do it. I mean, my gosh, what confidence we would have. We love to watch movies, right? Where life and death is on the line. It's clear what everybody needs to do. But our life is not like that. You wake up today, you've got way too many possibilities and opportunities, all the while thinking you're supposed to find just that one thing that's just for you, one thing out of seemingly limitless opportunities. Well, I have Mike Zeller on the show today because I'm incredibly interested in his concept of us having a zone of genius. As we'll hear at the top of the show, he makes a great case for our genius and purpose not being one thing, one role, but a zone that we understand and work within. There's some parameters. It's not limitless. It's not just one thing. And this is hopeful and just rings so true to my own experience. Mike is a renowned business architect and a mentor to entrepreneurs, but I find his personal genius lies within his innate ability to help people pinpoint their deepest purposes, their greatest gifts, and their highest potential to serve and influence the world, which is what we all long to do. His book is called The Genius Within, Your Natural Pathway to Impact, Fulfillment, and Wealth. So we walk and talk through understanding your unique talents, your key relationships, your unique life experiences, and your values and passions and how they compilate into your zone of genius. This is a deep conversation that I think is going to give you some profound insights. Mike also works a lot within neurology and neuroscience, and he's got a couple cool resources. 14 free tools to rapidly rewire your nervous system, which is at neurorewiring.com. Neurorewiring.com. And you can get a free copy of his book. Go to geniuswithinbook.com. Folks, as you hear this, questions, ideas, thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Email me at kmiller@kevinmiller.co. What drives you becomes your reality. We're here to create a better reality right here, right now. So drive with me a moment as we consider how to clarify our zone of genius and realize that purpose is not limited to just one thing. I love the topic, this zone of genius. So the first thing that hit me, Mike, was as people, all of us are, thinking about our purpose. We're thinking about that one thing. I end up talking with my older kids. I told you I was up late last night talking with some of my older kids, and I've had to really work with them on that. I think they've gotten that feeling from me of, oh my gosh, they have to go after their purpose, the holy grail, that one thing, that one role, which is daunting, especially if you're early 20s or something like that. I think it is for anybody to look at it as this one cause, this one thing.
Yeah.
Thus, I appreciate you saying it's not one thing. It is a zone. Unpack just that concept for us.
Yeah. So I remember being in my early 20s too. And I was like, man, I got to figure out my thing. And you put so much pressure, and it's really, you just got to be in the right game. And you figure it out. And part of the game is to show up and serve, use your gifts and acts in service of benefit, make the world better because you existed. And now I have found that we're going to be so much more fulfilled. And this is new stuff I've even gone into around flow state. So when we're in flow state, we release 500. We're 500% more productive. We release all 6 positive neurochemical cocktails, meaning serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, norepinephrine, and all the others, right? And when we're in that state, the people that achieve the most happiness and satisfaction in life live in flow state the most. So then I'm starting to reverse engineer. How do I get to flow state? Well, you get in flow state, you're about twice as likely to get in flow state when you're in your zone of genius. So then how do you get in your zone of genius? Well,
let's get into that. I do want to ask what your source is. Now we had, and for my folks listening, we had Steven Kotler on the show. Yep. It's been probably a couple years ago. So he's I kind of give him the current, position of the guy on
Correct.
Flow. Is there any, someone else that you?
He's the best right now. Yeah. Since Mihaly, I have no idea how to say Dr. Mihaly's last name.
Yeah.
Since he passed away, Kotler is the guy. Yeah.
So as you're relating it to zone of genius, give your own, layman's definition of flow state then.
Yeah. When you're in flow state, you just feel so alive and you're almost unconscious and you're almost seamless and in sync. And you think the easiest way to look is sports. Like right now, as we're recording, NBA playoffs are happening. Well, like I remember watching the Chicago Bulls. They were my team. And when Jordan and Pippen or John Paxson and Steve Kerr, they're in sync. They know where each other is going to be. They know each other's strengths, their weaknesses, and they don't have to verbally say it. They know how to play together. And they're just in this almost unconscious synergy with one another. Well, we can get in flow state with our spouse. We can get in flow state with our coworkers. We can get in flow state with our self, our higher self even. And where you're almost channeling or receiving that divine download. But when you're in flow state, man, your work it literally flows. It's like you're going downriver instead of upstream. And it feels amazing.
So I got a question for you. And it came up in my show with Steven, and I never felt like we did a good job of unpacking it. And it's chewed on me a little bit since then, that as I look at myself and flow state, which for me is an idea that I'm writing about. So I'm creating on paper, or on the computer, and I'm just writing. And that's where I can lose track of time, which is really hard for me. I'm very, distraction oriented, and it's hard for me. So to come up and go, holy smokes, the time's gone past. That's flow. Mountain biking, trail running is for me. This is honestly, Mike, these conversations where I can find myself. Sometimes, you'll say something or a guest will say something and my mind's thinking over here, and then they finish up and then stuff comes out and I feel like I'm watching myself talk. So flow state, my question to you or what I have thought since talking with Steven is it feels like there needs to be a level of mastery in order to achieve it. What are your thoughts on that?
I would argue that's less, there's probably a baseline mastery so that you feel competent and confident enough to do it.
Okay.
Meaning if it's so frustrating that you just can't, you're figuring, like you're learning to play guitar at the beginning. Yeah. There's going to be like a level of frustration at the beginning unless you just have an unconscious knack or you're like a baby Mozart over here. Right. But usually once you get just past that frustration zone, and into the competence zone, then in that competence zone, now you're less trying to consciously train yourself to learn this. So now you can just lock in and you won't be as good as someone that's just in the unconscious excellence zone or the world-class extraordinary, but you'll be able to tap in and get there and you'll be able to flow kind of downhill if you're at least baseline competent. Okay. But you're also curious. I would say the other layer is you have to naturally have the talent. Okay, like I'm never going to be great as a singer. I might go from horrible to mediocre, but I'm not going to. My wife's great, and she can go to even greater. And so you have to be honest with yourself of like, can I actually get to a truly exceptional level? And because I've found if I'm operating from my raw strengths, I'm much more likely to activate flow state.
Okay. You mentioned excellence, and you actually in the book, in your first story, what's her name? Boss.
Kristen Boss. Yeah.
Right. And you talk about that, and you said in the story, as you were showcasing, she came to you, she was struggling, and you said she had been in her zone of excellence as a hairstylist, I think it was. And you differentiated the zone of excellence from the zone of genius. Do that for us here.
Yeah. So Kristen, she's actually in Colorado, near where you're at as well. So she knew purpose-wise, she was supposed to be a speaker, an author, and a coach. And she had raw talent at that. She had the confidence. She's a high DI. She's a star on the wealth dynamics profile as we did the wealth dynamics test. Stars are naturally great as entertainers and speakers. Like almost all the stars I know, they can step on a stage, barely have a talk prepared, and just would feel like someone like me, they're just winging it, but they're just showing up and delivering their presence because they love to be in the limelight. So as we reverse engineered her identity, her genius, then we could see, all right, yes, your belief and this vision of you when you're deeply integrated with yourself that you're going to be a dynamic speaker, author, and all that jazz, you actually have the right skill set for that. You're actually wired for that too. And that gave her confidence as we moved through. She was already a top 1 or 2% hairstylist, but you know what? There's a much smaller ceiling for that. And as we dove into becoming her figuring out her pathway as a coach, speaker, and author, then step by step, she just started taking off like a rocket ship because she had an innate talent for that.
So I'm going to go ahead and unpack some things here that are, they're not new. It may feel elementary, but it's kind of like the common sense. It's not common anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we look at that, you mentioned something to the effect that I wrote down, your talents. We think about that a lot, your talents, your giftings, your natural inclinations, the stuff that we throw around out there. We have those things. We're looking for those things. So you use, personality profiles and different audits to kind of figure out, okay, what does so-and-so, what are their natural predispositions, inclinations, the things that they are, Johnny seems like he has a knack for math but oh my gosh, he can't write to save his life, so let's look at this math thing. It's great. Now it still requires that to be honed, refined.
Correct.
He's not going to be in flow and rocking it out until he, in essence, I'm going to throw this at you, puts his 10,000 hours in.
Yeah.
Play with that with us and how you guide people in regards to that.
Yeah. And I'll also add, if you're already naturally gifted, like Kristen, so she went from making about $100K a year as a hairstylist to making over 7 figures her first year. And then the next year, multiple 7 figures. And now she's, heading towards 8 figures almost. Right. And in that lane, we didn't necessarily need 10,000 hours for her to get to excellent. Now, for her to get to her best, to be truly world-class, she will need closer to that 10,000 hours. But actually, and even Malcolm Gladwell, who popularized that distinction, was actually on violin players. And that hard 10,000, it's not a hard 10,000 hour rule for every area of genius and specialty. Some people can get there in 1,000 hours of like be truly world-class and or be one of the best, right? Just if you're, Elon Musk didn't need to study. He wasn't a rocket scientist for 20 years to start a space company. Right. He already had the talent and he was a boy genius in that. So, but the process, you do need to intentionally and I love, back to Michael Jordan. I just finished watching Last Dance again for the 3rd time. And so he tells the story of he's on the dream team. And he was shocked at how, the other best players in the world did not dedicate themselves to honing their craft and their practice. They did not practice at the level he did with the intensity and the refinement and the training and the dedication. But, you see it with the Tom Brady's and the Kobe Bryant's and the LeBron and Michael, the guys that are just above and beyond. And so they were coasting on their talent a little too much is what he felt like. But if you want to be great, you find, hey, where do I have the right skill sets? Where does it match my path? So I have 4 key areas: your unique talents, your defining life experiences, your key relationships, and your values and passions. So they all, your unique abilities point you to, hey, these are your gifts. These are the things to manage your weak, I call it your weak asses, where you're a weak ass, you suck. Be really honest. I suck at XYZ. Yeah. This is your cluster relationships where you can already enter into this industry, enter into this world. Like Kristen Boss we figured out she's in the network marketing mom world. So she's one of the best trainers in the world for network marketing, $100,000 a year moms. That's her niche. That's her 4% client. And then her Divine Life experiences. She did a bunch of network marketing, and she was a mom trying to succeed and trying to make an impact, but she didn't love being in network marketing, but she loved the idea and the concept and personal development.
Right.
And then values and passions, fit, personal growth, personal mastery. So all the check boxes were checked instead of, like, if a box is unchecked, like if I'm passionate about sustainability and I'm an engineer, but I'm in the oil industry and my relationship, well, then I'm going to have that one significant box unchecked.
Yeah.
And that's going to slow me down.
Play with the aspect of, so zone of genius. I mean, you're looking for, again, you're trying to take something, me, whoever it is, and say, what are you most naturally geared towards? Now, one of the things, actually, I want to pull this out too, and it kind of goes to the zone of excellence type thing. That I keep bumping up again, especially talking with kids. You know, they're in school. Schools seem to be, not to diss them, but they tend to look at, okay, what's Sally good at? You know, well, let's go again. You know, so Sally's good at math. Well, let's just steer her that direction. She may be good at math. Does it give her energy?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that reading your book because I seem to have a natural knack for ball sports.
Yeah.
So I did football. I did baseball. I did soccer. I did really well.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. it. And I finally found, I did like athletics, and I found professional cycling, very different, no balls, you know, it was endurance focused. That was my, where I went, but I was good, but it didn't give me how do you root that out to say, okay, you may be good at it. You may even have excellence at it, but it's not your zone of genius.
Yeah. So again, then you say in that category, you say passion. You didn't have the passion for ball sports.
Yeah.
So I couldn't check that box. So it's in your zone of excellence, but it's not going to be in the zone where you're going to be most committed, most determined, most inspired to drive, because your why wasn't there, of just that joy and that fulfillment.
Yeah.
Which that joy and fulfillment is also a prerogative for activating, or it's very helpful for activating flow state, because it's just that endless quest. Like, you could do it the rest of your life just because it's something you enjoy and you're fulfilled by.
Okay. The hope, the hope and the opportunity. Here's what I like about, how you structure the zone of genius, because again, I'm going to keep referencing, I'm with my kids all the time. I got a lot of kids. And so they're my muse. I mean, they're what drove me to write my book. And looking at them and other people too in the self-improvement industry, and you go in and you kind of get those messages of it. You're limitless. You know, you can do anything. That's overwhelming for one. And two, it's really not true. Can I do anything? Well, sure, theoretically, I could go try to dance, but my feet just don't work that way. My head doesn't work that way. So I could bust my butt and be the exception. You keep talking about the NBA. You know, we can go through the stats. The average NBA player is this tall. They have this, you know, quality, whatever. Now there's probably some other ones. I'm old enough. There's Muggsy Bogues, who was 5'3".
Yeah. So small.
Yeah. So small, like 137 pounds. And he still did it. Well, that's great. The amount of work he had to do, more so than those other guys. So if you want to be that exception, maybe so. I doubt that often you are helping people be that exception to something that seems like a really bad fit. You're looking for this natural, what they are most guided to, which is going to be the thing that gives them the most joy, but it narrows it down. So it's not anything out there. So this should be the good news. And no, you're not qualified and going to be best at everything. It's going to be pretty narrow. That should be kind of exciting, I think, more so than you can do anything that is just massively overwhelming. Fair?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a total bogus myth that you can be anything and do anything, but mainly because not that it should be, you have the right and the choice to explore and become anything that's not limited by race or gender or religion or sex or blah, 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 whatever. Right.
Right.
So I'm 100% with that, but I'm not naturally gifted at anything. And yes, I could become a musician, but I would be a mediocre. My ceiling is going to be different as a musician than it's going to be as a thinker or in the realm of psychology and peak performance. And that's just like Muggsy Bogues. He wasn't going to be the best basketball player ever because he was limited. And he was a foot and a third shorter than Michael Jordan, who was average on his height.
Yeah.
Right. So he was far. So it's just your ceiling of potential is different. And at the end of the day, you got to be wise of like, all right, but Muggsy still became obviously a top 0.1% because he made it to the NBA and played whatever 8 or 9 years, something like that. So that's still a pretty good accomplishment in many regards. But I think when we're looking at this, I wanted to create a pathway and a filtering process that anyone could go through. And I really think it's the most complete process ever created for someone to go through and gather all the data about who you are, what on earth you're meant to do. And when you do the process, you literally have hundreds of pages of information about you, your strengths, your weaknesses, your talents, your life experiences, and you're tying them all together. You're connecting the dots. Steve Jobs says we can only connect the dots by looking backwards, right? Well, I'm connecting the dots based on your history, your gifts, your genius. And now the patterns pop like popcorn. That's the goal. The patterns, I want someone to go through the whole process, which pretty much I haven't found anyone that doesn't have patterns pop or ahas as they go through the whole process to find out who on earth they are. And then you're much more precise. It's kind of like, I think of it, I'm helping people create surgery I'm a neurosurgeon on your peak performance.
Yeah.
I don't want someone just cutting up my head, cutting a hole in my head and filling it around trying to find if anything's wrong. I want them to go, if I have a brain tumor, I want them to go precisely right to the brain tumor, get it done, get it taken out. Like I want precision. So this is for someone who wants to get much more precise about their gifts and their purpose and where to apply them.
And we're going to walk through your steps here in just a minute. What is and I assume, within that process is where you're able to also find more opportunity, back to kind of the passions thing. And I'm thinking about another baseball or basketball story. And I can't remember, it was out of somebody's book. I wish I'd give them credit for it, but it was, again, kind of somebody who was just passionate literally about the NBA. And it was a guy who was very short, very slight. I think, not that this should matter, but the story, it just said he was of Indian descent and whatever, but he loved it.
Yeah.
And how we tend to look at that and go, well, gosh, so he's going to be Muggsy, right? Well, he really just enjoyed the industry. He enjoyed so many things about it. And the story goes on, and he became a chiropractor, I think, for one of the top NBA teams. So he's totally enmeshed in basketball. He travels with the team. He's feels like one of the team. He's not actually a player. And I've just realized that I think we can all be kind of can't see the forest for the trees with our own things. I remember a guy eons ago who said, yeah, I really want to be a fitness trainer or something like that. But I don't know how I'm ever going to own a gym. And I thought, that's the only opportunity that you see. And yet I found myself there and looking at something and going, okay, I want to do this. And you see one path because you've had exposure to one thing. So we're working with you to say, okay, here's my passion, but there's, in some ways, and there's a myriad of opportunities within anything like that. You want to be involved in the NBA, you could probably come up with 1,000 different employed jobs or opportunities in that. How do is that part of the process of going through to figure out, okay, what's an opportunity that may be outside of the box?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like gathering, okay, so like I realize I have a lot of gifts and skills in understanding human psychology and understanding peak performance. Well, I'm also passionate about sports. I've thought about being a sports agent before, like going and working with like pro athletes and being their agent. I have a background in real estate. I sold 500 homes when I did real estate. So I have a natural, and I've cultivated and know how to cultivate great relationships, and then also negotiate and travel. So I could apply that same skill set that I cultivated in real estate, something that I'm passionate about, but I'm not as passionate about as human performance. And now I would be curious, because curiosity, I like to think a curiosity often becomes a passion often becomes a purpose, and a purpose often becomes a path, but not always. So sometimes a curiosity, like I'm curious about cooking food. It's not ever going to become a life path. I'm not going to become a nutritionist, have a cooking show. That's, it's a little bit of a passion. I've got my own pizza oven. I've got a gelato maker. I've got other fun things that I make that are really good, but it's definitely not going to be my life path because I'm more passionate and more curious and more aptly skilled to do what I'm doing now, which is helping high performers unlock their deepest area of genius, work through trauma, PTSD, get more deeply aligned with who they are and what on earth they're meant to do.
And again, man, the hope, the opportunity here that I want people to hear is I'm not going to go back with regrets and whatnot, but here I am, and I feel like, and I'm grateful to feel like I'm working a lot in my zone of genius. Oh my gosh, it took me a long time.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I remember so long ago writing down the things that I felt like I was passionate about. Food was one of them, food and cooking and drink. I'm passionate about it, but then it was, do I want to work at it?
Yeah.
And realize, and I had a friend at the time who's such a great contractor. He's great at building stuff. And of course, that was my thought of, well, then go do that. He said, man, I just don't enjoy doing it for pay.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have a file for that at the time. I thought, well, gosh, if you enjoy it, you should go do it for pay. And then, so that's what helped me realize, okay, here's my list of things that I care about, I'm curious about like that. But do I want to do them as a vocation? Yeah, no. And so what you're saying is that there's some boxes I wasn't able to check.
Yeah, exactly. And I've found my process, you do it in completion in entirety. It can take 8, maybe even as little as 6 hours up to 12 to 15 hours. When we're done with that, you've got more clarity than you've ever had in your life. And now you can make decisions for the rest of your life in a much more precise direction. And it changes the ballgame. So the sooner, the better. Then you're left. So the other aha for me was like, never, ever do you find someone that accomplished something truly extraordinary that they weren't world class at. Like Steve Jobs was world class. Richard Branson, Winston Churchill, JFK, whoever. You're world class at certain elements of what you do. Like someone, and you're at the top, one of the top, you got a great show, you got a great book, you got a great brand, because you are in your niche, your lane. You're not trying to be Tim Ferriss over here. You're nor Andrew Huberman, nor whatever. You're Kevin Miller. You're world class at being Kevin Miller. And you're still figuring out what that next level of world class for you looks like.
Sure. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's we'll hit on that too, because maybe that's the other thing that is so daunting, is to think I need to find that one thing and it's the final destination.
Yeah.
And that has been, it's been helpful for me to look at, and I'm going to go full bore. Even right now, I'm looking at some new things and I'm thinking, man, I may put the effort into that and look at 2 years, and then we'll see. Maybe that's all it'll span. That's helpful.
Yeah. And it's fun to stroke the curiosities. So like Elon didn't know at age 10 he's going to do a rocket ship company, probably.
Yeah.
He's like, that'd be a cool idea. Maybe I will someday. I'm curious about space. But it's like you stroke a curiosity, and sometimes it will become a purpose or a passion. And then sometimes it will become a purpose, and sometimes it will be a life path. But not always.
Hit on one of the things you talk about in the book as your own personal story, and you cite some others, is, I don't know if I pulled this as a statement right out of the book or it was my paraphrasing, but crisis. And to some degree, crisis can birth genius. I don't think you said crisis does, like, so you all have to go out there and figure out how to massively fail, but it can. And I look back and yeah, again, I don't want to, I think I've struggled with this before trying to help people. And it's like, I'm not want to tell my kids, hey, go out and massively, go bankrupt and really fail to learn. Though a lot of people, gosh, if I look at the people, the books on my shelves behind me that I've had on the show, I'd probably be hard pressed to find any of them who didn't have something that didn't work out. They didn't end up homeless. They didn't die. They made it, but to some degree that failed. That was difficult. And oh my gosh, I learned X.
Yeah. Crisis becomes a refining fire. And Another phrase I borrow from Marcus Aurelius / Ryan Holiday: the obstacle becomes the way. And so when you go through a crisis, what does it do? It creates this intensity of refinement, intensity of growth, intensity of understanding where your why is so big that you're laser focused, and it helps you lock into that flow state. So like when my wife, this is after the book actually right as I was releasing the book while I was writing the book, my wife was in depression. I just didn't fully realize it at the time because I didn't have a category for depression in my worldview and experience I had never been up close and personal with it. So I didn't recognize it. But, we're in the midst of the struggle. And then as I started realizing it, that why is my wife just like not able to hold her, frankly, she was like, it just would unravel at the slightest thing. And even though she had a lot to be grateful for and all that, I was like, and why is she worried about, her childhood was so much, and our daughter was activating all these feelings. I didn't understand she's having flashbacks and PTSD. Yeah. And then as I started realizing, then I had clarity. I got a massive problem to solve. I want my wife to be here for my daughter. I want my wife back because I essentially lost my wife for 2.5 years. How am I going to help get her out of this funk? And if I can figure out, I already had the innate talent to understand human psychology because I've read, hundreds of books or whatever on it, listened thousands of hours of podcasts and YouTubes and Tony Robbins, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, all right, I can figure this out, and started literally studying trauma. I listened to 150 podcasts, probably in 8 or 9 months on it, started neuroscience, geeking out on it, reading trauma books while my wife and daughter were sleeping next to me. I'm on my Kindle at 11 o'clock midnight, flipping through trauma books, trying to understand what the heck's happening. And my why was activated because of that scenario. And so I was on a quest to figure this out. And so that became, initially it was just to solve my own problem.
Yeah.
So that curiosity, passion now has become a core part of my purpose and ultimately most likely part of my life path.
Okay, I'm thinking about that because I appreciate you taking that. So we're not talking about the crisis of even a failure or something that we messed up. Yeah. You're saying this is it's kind of the necessity is the mother of invention. So
yeah,
how often that'd be an interesting study too. Yeah, even looking at the 250 people plus I've had on the show, how many of them found their place, their zone of genius through call it what you want, a predicament, whatever. It's got to be a high number.
And I call it a defining life experience. So there's defining life experiences that, look at Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school basketball team in sophomore year. That drove him even further. He had the raw talent, he had the athleticism, and then he grew another 3 inches and got over 6 feet, and then he grew to 6'6" by his senior year. So, you look at those moments of necessity point us in a direction. And then we have a choice to stick with it as a longer term thing or a short term thing.
It's interesting, Mike, your story reminded me, and I don't have a list that would be, again, an interesting one to have, but I was doing the math. I was going through your story, and that you kind of started working with this zone of genius in 2016, I think is the timeline I got out of the book or somewhere.
Yeah.
And yet you cite over here, you're in 2019, kind of having to go back and revisit it because you're struggling. It didn't fix everything. And then you're still dealing with some stuff. And the book was, I think the published date was 2021. And I'm thinking, correct, this is happening. So this thing that you have now had great success with, you kind of developed while you were dealing with your own junk. And it just reminded me, and it was a good reminder for me and for other people to hear how often, again, it'd be a great study, how many of some of our great classic books, even Zig Ziglar and See You at the Top and some of those. And if you go do the math, you realize, hey, wait, they were writing this while they were figuring this out. They didn't write this 20 years after they made $1 billion. So many of these, I kind of think that's Napoleon Hill's story, if I remember correctly. He's writing this, and you do the math and go, dude, he was writing it, and he was penniless while he was writing it. He was kind of writing his own, he was kind of creating his own, kind of creating your own medicine. How's that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And the trials and tribulations of our lives are I can't remember, Tony Robbins and others often say pain is a gift from above. So how am I going to use this pain? Am I going to use it to defeat me? Or am I going to use it to cause me to rise? I talk about a metaphor of airplane. Like we all fly. Let's say we hop in a Boeing 737. We're going from Denver to Nashville. Kevin's coming to visit me in Nashville. Well, as that plane takes off, it hits something called air that happens to be invisible. It's invisible resistance, but it's very, very real. Yeah. And it's actually the resistance of the air. It has to hit it hard enough, fast enough, and at the right enough angle. But that invisible air or resistance will force the plane up into the night sky, will cause it to lift off. So I think in our lives, crises, challenges, obstacles, fears, doubts, they're an arrow to show you what's next. Do you want to grow? Then tackle that next. Yeah. Face that and use it to force yourself up into the night sky. That discomfort zone expands your comfort zone. Lean into that.
Okay, well, on that note then, Mike, I kind of in the God repeating himself concept, I actually had two friends that called me out. I mean, they didn't call me, but call me out in love of just trying to help me in some areas of my life right now, and called me out on resistance that I'm resisting.
Yeah.
And it was right after that, I think I was reading Florence Shin's book, and she talks about resistance. And then there was another one. And then I pick up your book, and I think that's like the second part in the beginning of the book or something, is your discussion on resistance. And so I'll just ask you right here to unpack that in regards to Zone of Genius.
Yeah. So Stephen Pressfield and War of Art. Have you read that?
Yeah.
Oh, so good, right?
It's been a while though. And I read yours. I thought I need to go back because, I read it, but I probably need to read it for such a time as this.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I've read it like 5 times and it's an easy read, but he really nails resistance better than anyone else that I've seen, where resistance is there. And it's not the thing external, it's the thing inside. And that thing inside, it also points you to what your next level of growth is. And the challenging thing of resistance unconsciously wants to keep you safe. Back to our nervous system, our brain and our nervous system is wired. Number one objective is not to make you thrive, but to make you safe. So that's where the amygdala kicks in. That small little tiny part of your brain will override every other part of your brain if it feels there's a threat.
Yeah.
So that's why people get stuck in trauma and they can't get unstuck, because everything becomes a threat. Yeah. And that amygdala can get frozen and locked into leading your brain and nervous system. Well, in resistance, if I'm facing resistance, then it's almost like, why is it there? What's the emotion associated? What's the fear associated of what I might become or who I might become if I get on the other side of this? Like, I remember I had a resistance coming out with a book. I'm like, I'm not that qualified. I haven't accomplished. I just came out of like a period of losing $1 million, and I didn't have the marketing budget I wanted to have to launch the book. I was like, you know what? I'm writing in this period of deep suffering. One of the darkest periods of my life, because my wife's in the throes of depression. And I'm like, all right, I got to get this out though. I got to face my fear. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to expand and become more. And I knew I was passionate about the subject. And my passion and conviction about the subject matter, I also knew from age 19 that I was called. A core part of my purpose, I kind of got it download in a campus ministry event, that I'm here on earth to help unlock people's divine potential. And so, you know what, that helped pull me through the resistance, because also what will happen too, right when you're about to break through, a massive breakthrough, resistance is literally going to smack you extra hard and knock you back with fears, doubts, beliefs, excuses, why you shouldn't do this thing, why you shouldn't become this, why you shouldn't take that leap. And I see it all. It's kind of the crabs in the bucket, the crabs in the bucket metaphor.
Yeah.
Right. So, one crab tries to get out, the other crabs will pull it right back in. That's why you don't need to have a lid on the bucket. And it just goes down to our innate desire, and where the majority of humanity falls, and even ourselves at times, is we stay in whatever we're comfortable with. And it can be emotion comfort. Like, you're comfortable cycling and pushing yourself on the limits of cycling. Well, now you're leaning into some of this other psychology, relationship stuff, trauma stuff, whatever. But that initially might feel a little scary. Exploring it.
Well, totally. It's like it's the fearless kind of concept. I can be fearless with my body. I can be fearless with risk in that way. But am I fearless with, how about a deep emotional conversation? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so back to resistance. And I actually keep, we're going to jump into your 4 steps here, but I want to jump down because in your book, you have a section called Genius Blockers.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought me to, here's somebody you mentioned Stephen Pressfield, somebody else who I know of, but I have not gotten into their stuff for whatever reason, is Byron Katie.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I look at resistance, and again, I'm going to come from my current dealing with it. And I was helped to be brought to what's the resistance? It's fear. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fear of what? Let's unpack that. And I have seen this list from Byron Katie, the 3 things, and you added a 4th. So I want to go ahead and jump there because you brought this thing up. And your question, or the questions are, take that fear, take that resistance, like you with a book, feeling an imposter syndrome, or am I really qualified? And number 1 question, is it true? Are you really unqualified? You probably look at that and go, well, no, not really. I'm not. Number 2, can you absolutely know that it's true? Number 3, how do you react when you believe that thought? And then 4, who would you be without that thought? Great way to unpack it. Thanks for bringing that back to life. It's one of those things that, have I read it? Have I heard it? Sure. Okay, did it change you? Okay, no, let's go back. So that's a great way to hit the resistance.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
100%. And another thing that sometimes we have to do is when we are encountering resistance, this is where I do a lot of alter ego work now with clients and from peak performance side. So like Kobe Bryant had Black Mamba, Beyonce had Sasha Fierce. So Beyonce grows up in a church choir. Well, she can't dance and be a great entertainer as a church choir girl.
Right.
So she creates this alter ego named Sasha Fierce, and that helps her stretch. Because she's like, oh, when I step on stage, I am Sasha Fierce. In her brain, it basically tricks her brain into believing you're another person and you have different levels of freedom and you're not encased in this particular structure. And those thought experiments and stretching into alter egos is one of the most powerful tools that we can use to create a new pathway. Yeah. And now Beyonce doesn't have to think about being Sasha Fierce. She's just Beyonce when she steps on stage, because that is such a core part of her neuro pathways and her identity that it's there. But when you're creating a new identity, sometimes that alter ego part, like I have Magic Mike. I also have Weak Ass Willie. When I lost $1 million and I was going through that season, Weak Ass Willie, he was walking around with shame between his legs. His tail was tucked between his legs.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to show his face to the world. I was like, well, he's not going to solve this problem. I need another version of me. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck. And it was Magic Mike. I had a client call me Magic Mike. I was like, because I created magic in her life. And I was like, okay, I received that. I am Magic Mike. And I started building and anchoring into that identity so that I could create more magic in my life and in the lives of those that I serve.
The alter ego thing I like. And we have, I don't think it's even published yet, but I had a week or 2 ago, Richard Schwartz on the show, and he talking about we're not just one self, we are multiple self, not like this multiple personality style, but there's different versions of ourselves. And you brought that back to mind with the alter ego, and even, these folks giving themselves different names. And I, first off, that sounds kind of goofy, but then no, that's relevant to put myself, because what it made me think of, Mike, I still tend to be a little bit nervous. Okay, I'm going to have Mike Zeller, this guy, he's done a lot. He's well known, and I'm reading the book and I want to do my homework and really get into it. And I always have a little bit of nerves until I hit record. When I hit record, I just know that it just is I'm going to flow and it's going to go good. So I'll come back, folks, with a new name for myself for this. I want you to hit on, you mentioned it a little bit ago, as a key aspect before we jump into unpacking your 4 key areas, is just identity. That the issue of how do we, I think I wanted to ask it in the sense of how do we thwart or even sabotage our opportunity to find our zone of genius as we, by grappling with what our identity is.
Yeah. Yeah. So our identity is like Jesus said, a good tree cannot produce bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. An apple tree does not produce oranges. It's just a natural overflow. The problem is many of us, myself included, we all have a part of ourselves where we're living disintegrous with our truest identity, because we're on the quest to get there. And we might be like, I might be 85% aligned with my highest level identity right now versus last year I was 83% and the year before 79 or whatever. And as we accept, self-love is a major part of it, which also goes to part of the obstacles. Obstacles is trauma. Trauma is a massive blocker to identity. And then what's happening in trauma is you have all these wounded parts that are now flaring up. You're a victim or you're suffering. You're in a suffering energy instead of a joy and love energy. And when you move through those and heal those parts, then you can be more free to actually be connected with yourself and your heart and your body. And you've opened communication channels really in the 4 main areas: mind, body, heart, and spirit, right? So if I'm connected to myself and I'm deeply aligned and you can feel it, when someone is deeply aligned, they're literally more magnetic. Their identity is they're so deeply aligned, they have perfect congruency. Mother Teresa, perfect congruency. Tony Robbins, perfect congruency, right? Even you might even say, no, I'm not going to go there, but you see, think of like Mel Robbins or someone like that. Oprah has perfect congruency. You've got great congruency around some of the things that you're deeply aligned. Like if I go and hang out with you and we're going mountain bike riding and a little adventure sports, you got it. I'm going to have more self-doubt in that moment because I've never mountain biked. And I'm going to be like, am I going to break my shoulder? What's going to happen? And so then that self-doubt creates uncertainty, which creates hesitation, and which also lowers my confidence. And I don't see myself in that arena. I love sports. I love exercise. I love pushing myself, but I haven't done those particular things. So that identity is not going to make it where I naturally flow with you on the mountain bike. I'm going to be the last guy. You guys are going to be waiting up for me or coming and picking me up after I've broken myself.
Right. Right. I still love the perspective of, we're looking for those core, and again, you go back or you talk a lot about aspects of personality profiles as tools. I mean, there's lots of tools, but those are ones. And you talk about, actually give a quick list of these. And I think you've got them listed on your website as well, that you didn't showcase them as the end all, but hey, man, these are great tools. We talk about them a lot. And you actually pulled out some others that I'm not as fluent in. So give us those real quick.
Yeah. So, with the personality tools, again, the goal is to gather clues. And whatever clues will help you gain clarity, because I want the clues to pop like popcorn. Like you read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, or one of the other books. What's he do? He just gathers a bunch of research. And then if he has enough research and he's astutely looking for patterns, for clues, then the evidence pops. And he's like, oh, these are the traits of the level 5 leader or whatever it is. Same thing. And so the personality test I love. Wealth Dynamics is my favorite. And it's a profile. It's the only test in the world that shows you your natural pathway to build wealth. Like Kristen Moss, we realized this is her pathway. And this is how she needs to lead her business, not try and be an administrative CEO or system CEO. That's not her thinking. That's not her genius. She will only ever be mediocre at best and end up being frustrated if she tries to lead her business from that vantage point. But she needs to find people that are good at the things she's not good at. And so Wealth Dynamics is my favorite. Then you got Strengths Finder. I love all 34 strengths because it can tell you top to bottom these are your natural strengths and these are your bottom ones or your biggest weaknesses. Then disc profile, which is great. Obviously, Ashley, your dad was a huge fan of that one. Then Myers-Briggs is terrific as well. And then Enneagram's amazing, and Colby is another one. And there's others that are, assessments and things like that. But those are some of my favorites. And you just gather the evidence, and they all measure something different. There will be some overlap, but because again, if I want to get the most clarity, I look at clarity. The more clarity I have, the more confidence I can have. The more confidence I have, the more I will act and decide with certainty, which will lead to deeper levels of conviction. Because I'll know this is who I am. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm about. This is how I kick ass. This is how I suck. Don't let me do this thing. Like I have a client, she flew in for a private session a couple weeks ago, shifted her. She was about ready to abort the business and our business partnership. Now she's much more aligned in her genius. She points her business partner back into his area of genius, and she's staying right where she needs to be to build a multi-million-dollar business. And she has clear boundaries and justification for those boundaries, like him trying to get her to read 180-page legal documents. That's not her lane. She doesn't want to touch those things. She wants to go and recruit talent, shed light, be a spotlight on the business.
Yeah.
And it's created massive clarity in her business. And then also clarity in how she relates even with men as well in her romantic side.
Well, and we did just jump into number one. I mean, so the book on Zone of Genius is, you're leading us through 4 key areas. The first one, number one, is unique talents. And one of the things you use is personality profiles. And I want to take the opportunity because there was a time, I grew up doing, with my dad, Dan Miller, 48 Days of Work You Love. And I grew up doing every profile under the sun. And I got a little jaded at some point. And now I've come around and I'm a fan, not only of profiles, but of multiples. I want to take everyone that I can. I remember taking one, Mike, years ago, and I can't remember. I think you even mentioned it, but it's not one I've used since. But I took it, and the guy later on found out that I did some woodwork stuff, and he says, "Man, that doesn't fit your profile at all. That's outside." I said, "What? I don't know what to tell you. Go figure." Yeah. And it was then doing other profiles that I realized where that fit is, and even the fact that my woodwork is super, what we call it, natural, meaning there's no right angles, none of the math works, but I can make these cool things and it fits my style of not being exacting and just kind of creating something out of nothing. And that's what fits. But now I'm a fan of, I'd say, I'll take any personality profile and throw them. I'd love to have like a Venn diagram of all the big ones that kind of goes over and helps you see the kind of rounds you out. Mm-hmm. And I say that, I think if you get one profile and that's it, and get stuck on that, you'll miss out. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you, because I think you cite like 5. I was going to ask though, I think you have them listed somewhere on a website. Is that fair? And if we don't know now, we'll figure out a way to put it in the intro.
Yeah, I have them in the book and listed on the website too. Yeah.
Okay. Looking at, again, just the unique talents. Let me ask it this way, Mike. How do we, because there's nobody listening here that hasn't heard that. Of course, I'm supposed to, and I know I've got a knack for this or that. Where do you, in working with people, find that they think that they know, they got the concept, but they're missing how to really hone in on what is truly their unique talent?
Yeah. Well, I think the measurement, so doing the measurements, but then learning how to apply them to your unique situation. And this is where the passions, the relationship, is really the complete picture. You want a more complete picture, so that gives you more complete direction on how to utilize the talents. Because if I just do the test, like lots of people will do the test, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm an introvert, I'm a thinker, I'm a feeler, I'm a this, I'm a that. Great. Now, what's that mean for your work? What's that mean for your romance? What's that mean for how you parent? And then also learning to accept and let go of, I'm not going to be this sort of parent because I'm not wired that way. I'm wired this way. And I'm going to give that person my gifts in that way. And yes, we're going to manage our weaknesses. Like my wife and I, neither one of us are that administrative. So we know as our wealth builds and all that, we're going to have household help to manage our administrative part.
Yeah.
And we're okay with that. And that might mean that, I'm going to teach my kids different things. I'm not going to be the slow, patient teacher. I'm going to be more the advanced teacher of creating transformational experiences. That's okay. Right. So I think the thing that we got to look at is like taking those talents, managing the weaknesses, being okay to manage the weaknesses, giving yourself permission to delegate, to delete things that are not you, and not just feel like you have to do this because this is the role I signed up for in my marriage or in my job or business.
I appreciate you saying that. And again, this is what we're hoping to save people from. I remember back when I first started podcasting. And so here I am, I'm on a mic, I'm delivering a message, something that I care about. And I came upon, I think somebody shared it with me, Gary Vaynerchuk, way back in the day, back with Wine Library. So his dad owns, if people don't know it, owns a wine store. Gary starts doing these videos of him with, what was it, New York Jets helmet as a spittoon, and he's tasting wine and said, this tastes like socks. He's being totally irreverent and doing his thing. And I'm looking at the engagement that he has. He's putting these videos out and the engagement is off the charts. And so I compare us. So I think, okay, I'm speaking to an audience. He's speaking to an audience. He's killing it. So I went forward and set up a studio. It was actually in the basement of this office I'm in right now. And I put, we've got black behind here and got video cameras and lights and whatever. And I start doing it. And it was a complete flop because I'm sitting there talking about a topic like this. This was before I was even doing interviews. So I'm just sitting there as a talking head. Well, Gary's animated and he's got wine bottles and he's uncorking and popping and he's pouring and he's sipping and he's spitting, and you want to watch it. You don't want to watch what I'm doing. I totally missed it.
Yeah.
And so I took how would you describe that? I took something that looked viable, but I missed the application.
Yeah. And you might've missed the, this underground river of demand.
Okay.
So if you think of what did Gary do with Wine Library? He's a star entertainer. He's playful. He's got bold personality. So he's got this wild personality that's just irreverent and offensive to some. But then he coupled it with stored up demand. There's a lot of wine enthusiasts around the world. And he applied that, and then he had a little fun playfulness, so he had the entertainment value. But he found this underground demand that was already there around, hey, education, great education on wine. That there's millions of great wine lovers in the U.S. and tens of millions more that are just enjoy it as well. So I think just those two things.
Yeah. Well, again, I just want people to hear that. And I need to continue that. I love modeling, to take something that you're going after and go, who's doing it well, go model after them, with the caveat now of, but are you them? You have to find your own style, your own way of doing it. When I look at Mike Zeller's Instagram with, 400 or 500,000 people, whatever, and go, oh my gosh, man, look at what he's doing. I need to do that. Now I got to back up and go, okay, we're both talking about some similar topics. We may have similar guests, but we're just different. He has different knowledge. He has different interests. And I need to take my own flavor and be true to that zone of genius. Because you're over here talking about X and that sounds really good. And I see the engagement. Oh my gosh, it doesn't give me energy and I'm just not that knowledgeable, but I've got this over here. I mean, that we've talked multiple times about my mountain biking. That's a big part of who I am. I was a pro cyclist. I love doing that. People connect with that. So I should leverage that, not leverage you've got knowledge in psychology at a depth that I've got knowledge of, maybe you got I'd say mastery in. Okay, you're going to leverage. Well, you do. That's a big part of your platform. True.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, exactly. And I'm endlessly curious about it. I'm reading like 3 psych books right now, on trauma, plant medicines, blah, 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 neuroscience, whatever it is.
Well, and you mentioned I'm so into health and wellness. Now you go to Huberman, one of the biggest shows out there. Oh my gosh, I literally, I mean, he's amazing. I don't listen to him a lot. He's so medical that it loses even me. And I feel like I know more than I actually listen to it a lot, or you listen to it sometimes, and think, who on earth understands this? I mean, he's amazing. People really, apparently they do, because everybody's listening. But being true to ourselves. So unique talents, and I like that. Just you drive us to being true to who we really are, taking those unique things about us and leveraging that. Now, the second part of your structure here is then key relationships. Just give us the overview of that as number 2.
So I started reflecting on this when I was working in the real estate game. And I was like, I like realtors, but I actually really love being around other authors and thinkers and creators. I was like, these are the people that I love. And then I also I don't like hanging out with people that are, let's say they're accountants and that's all they do is accounting. And so they're kind of, there's plenty of interesting, inspiring people with accounting backgrounds, but the average accountant might be stiff as a board.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I would feel, right? I hope you don't have a lot of accountants on your listening to your show, because sorry, but this is I want that flavorful, passionate curiosity, kind of Da Vinci, Renaissance man type energy of you're exploring so many different things. I'm neurodivergent in that I have so many different interests. So there's people that give you life and people that give you death. And I want to be around more and more of the people that give me life and manage or minimize the people that are giving me death.
Yeah.
Okay. Second aspect of the key relationships is where do I already naturally have a hotbed of relationships or a cluster. So I looked up when I started creating next evolutions of this concept, in the late 2018 or whenever it was. Man, I got so many best-selling authors as friends, and I've loved books since I was a kid. My mom I kept going through my mom used to pay us $1, my brother and I, $1 to read a book when we were 8 and 7 years old or whatever. And my brother never had one. He never got $1. I kept on reading, and I got dollars and dollars and dollars. And then finally she's like, no more, I'll just buy you the books. I'm not paying you to read the books. And so I had this cluster of authors. I was like, yeah. And maybe in my future, I'm meant to be a best-selling author and be an author and write books and read it. And so I see that. You're looking for clues of where you almost unconsciously or energetically light up and you're driven. And then you also have this cluster of people that it's easy for you to access. I can access authors, thought leaders so much easier. I can access e-commerce, entrepreneurs. My buddy, Aaron, he's one of my mentors, Aaron Stokes, has an automotive repair business, has 9 or 10 shops called Eurofix and some others. Well, he had domain expertise in that. He's an 8th grade education. He resonates and connects with the average blue collar type dude. And now he's got the biggest coaching business in the country for coaching automotive repair shops. He makes over $10 million a year in profit. And that's his lane of genius. He's got relationships. He enjoys that crowd. He loves it. And he does exceptionally well.
Okay, I want you to help people on this topic, Mike, we live in a culture that's more isolated than ever.
Yeah.
We all have, 5,000 friends, quote, that we don't know who they are. And we're isolated. And I keep hearing that more and more, even amongst, I don't care if you're CEO of a Fortune 500 company, that some of them, so address that when you have somebody who comes along and they don't have those key relationships. They may not be, they go, I get the idea. And it's great, Mike, that you have the golden Rolodex and you have these people. Man, I've just had my, head down, pencil up for the past 10 years. Yeah. And I'm not really sure. I don't have people that I'm in community with. I don't have a blue zone that I'm hanging out with. How do you help them clue into clues about who those people would be if they haven't cultivated them thus far?
Yeah, great question. So my wife would be one of those.
Okay.
So she, and it's really, you got to be intentional about it. And my wife, she's an author. She's brilliant. But as she's evolved, she grew up in an ultra conservative, cult-like family, Christian conservative, but it was very cultish and it wasn't healthy. But she wanted to be spiritually connected. She's very loving. She's very kind. Well, as we got into some of the medicine community, and I had to drag her in, I had to, babe, we just got to experiment. We got to treat this as an experiment. And sure enough, she's found her two best friends in that community in the last year and a half. Spiritually minded, heart-minded, or heart-centered, very kind, non-judgmental, just what she needed. And then she's also, as she's explored her writing and gone to workshops and gone to conferences and opened herself up to relationships with other authors, but you have to say, all right, this is a passion of mine. Where's the ponds of other fish like me? Let me go to those ponds and let me see if I can connect. And you got to be open and willing to explore. But then you start building a cluster of people, and soon enough, you have a community and you have a village. And then you take advantage of the synergistic effect of ideas spreading, like the idea super virus that spreads from this person, and they make your ideas sharper. They make your concepts better. They give you emotional joy and that lift that kind of fuels your why as well.
I want to keep rounding it out. Because as I was, again, reading your book and I was thinking about the people who don't have, because I feel so privileged, maybe like you do too. And I grew up as a kid and my dad's hanging out with other entrepreneurs and he's, I'm going to conferences to hear, Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar. And I was fed this stuff that actually happened to fit me. Yeah. That's not everybody. And so I was thinking of, but everybody's listening to people right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got people who listen to your show. They listen to your podcast. They read, your books and they read these other books. And my gosh, I mean, I'm always amazed at people. I've, somebody like you on the show and they'll go, oh man, you probably know X, or you probably, are connected. I literally never heard of the person. There's so many people out there. And that's the great thing. We have to go look who speaks to us. What's the flavor? I thought that'd be a great audit. Who do you read? Who resonates with you? Who do you listen to? Who do you revere? If you may not know them, but that's a clue. One. And two is we hear so much about networking. Go to events, go to networking stuff. Those aren't my people. Those are generally it caters to extroverts. That's what I finally figured out. It caters to extroverts. And that's not me. I'm looking for one person to connect with and let's go outside of the conference and have dinner together and really go deep. And so we're talking about knowing yourself, you're unique, you're back to your identity. Who are you? And that helping you key into those key relationships. But then, like you said, with your wife, you do have to go show up. You got to make the call. For me, it may be connect me with one person and I've got to, would you send us an email and connect us, give me kind of that in, and then let me go from there. But I still have to take action and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And you just got to activate. Just activate and move in the direction, small steps build momentum. If I take 2 or 3 small steps a day towards my desired dream destination, I'm going to get there. I'm going to take, that's going to be over 1,000 steps in a single year. If I take 3 small steps a day.
The third one here, I'm going to kind of come at it in the same angle, Mike, of unique life experiences. So one, unpack that for us. Of why you have that as number 3, unique life experiences. But then I'm going to ask the same question too. There are people who just haven't had a whole lot. Again, they've been doing their thing. They've been in their lane. They really haven't had those unique life experiences to pull from. I'm sure you've dealt with them. So give us the overview of unique life experience, the value of that within your zone of genius, and then how to utilize those if you have them, and then address if you don't.
Yeah. Well, everyone's got unique defining life moments. It's just sometimes we don't categorize it as such and we don't recognize them as unique because we've kind of forgotten about them. And it's just our life. So, I take people from a timeline in the exercise. And it's really, really important because, again, clues are scattered throughout our life. And if you do the process, then you start gathering the clues. And it's like you get all the clues about you on the table, like a big conference room table, and then you can see. and a much more organized, systemized, filtered process that helps you identify, hey, this is who I am, and this is what my next chapter is going to look like. So I want to go from birth until present moment. And if I reverse, I walk back step by step. Like I can go back to my defined life moments of my wife getting cured of depression as in February 2023. That was a massive moment. One psilocybin guided therapy session that was 5 hours long. She walks into it, battling deep depression, still suicidal, better than she was because of some other stuff we'd done. Walks out of it, like she's triggered. Our daughter cries. It triggers her in a cascading form of depression and PTSD. Like that was just our daily battle. Day after the session, daughter cries for 18 minutes, has a full-on toddler temper tantrum meltdown. She laughs. I was like, oh, our life might be different. If this is going to stick, I didn't know if it would stick or not, but I was like, if this is going to stick, we got our life back. Sure enough, it did, right? So that's a defined moment. The depression battle, all that stuff, and learning about trauma became.
Can I just interject? Yeah. I want people to hear the story. So you and I were supposed to do this show 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And this topic came up, and you said that it's not only a defining life moment, you're actually now doing that for people. You're guiding them in this way. I mean, you went down that path, and we forgot, canned the show, and we spent an hour talking about that. It's significant. So keep going. Yeah. But this is one you're saying, this doesn't just happen and kind of, had an impact on my life. Mm-hmm. It's actually, you're pursuing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if we go back to genius blockers that I wrote in my book, I was like, and I saw how much our life, our marriage was being robbed of childhood trauma that was being triggered and activated in my wife's nervous system. And it wasn't a mindset fix because the nervous system is so much deeper. It was just her unconscious visceral reaction kicking in, her amygdala taking over and dominating her mind, and we couldn't get it unstuck. It's like we had velvet hammers, we needed a jackhammer to get this thing cracked open and rewired. So now I coach high-performing leaders around the world to rewire their nervous system. I use plant medicine, psilocybin, MDMA, sassafras, kanna. I don't supply and dose anything illegal, so that's separate. That's handled separately, but it protects me. But I can sit with someone and guide them because of the window, that 3 to 6 hour window while you're on the medicine. Your nervous system is more open to healing and transformation than any other point in your whole known life. So in that window, you can do 5 years worth of therapy in a single 5 or 6 hour window. But anyway, now back to my life experiences. So I had a master NLP practitioner, spent 1,447 hours with Tony Robbins, read hundreds of books. 2,000 books total, more than 2,000, but hundreds of books in the areas of peak performance, psychology, great, whatever, all those things. I love the subject. I have an innate draw and talent towards a background in ministry, defined life experience, did church ministry, which is I want to help serve and unlock people's divine talent. So for 25 years, I've done that in some capacity. Then I was like, when you get stuck in trauma, you get stuck in PTSD, freaking A, your life could be over if you can't figure this out. And I was like, this is the hardest freaking thing to get out of. We made a commitment. We're going to help others get out of it. And then now, I'm doing a session in a couple weeks in Boca Raton. Clients flying me in. We're doing a medicine day 1. Day 2, we're doing a whole zone of genius day because we have cleared out the trauma and all the junk in the trunk. And then I can go in and boom, wire our nervous system for a genius. And we'll have more clear. So it's like, so the defined life experiences, you go back and you trace through what led you to this point. What obstacles did you have to overcome? Who did you have to grow into to help solve this? What are you, like playing sports was a big thing for me. Sports, I learned that was defining life experiences, the failure, the embracing, the quest, the mental edge. I remember 16 years old, I'm throwing a baseball against the wall in my basement to practice and get stronger. I was like, top athletes, the very, very, very best athletes, they all have physical talent, but it's that mental edge. Mm-hmm. So how do I get the mental edge? So that led me, boom, boom, boom. Brian Tracy, event, changed my life. Like I can go through defined life moments. So it's gathering those clues and you see. It's just the evidence starts stacking, which starts giving you even more confidence you're on the right path, or you need to redirect, get to back on path.
Well, I want to, in candor, it has really been in the past few years, if that, Mike. Yeah, probably so. I think it started with my book, writing the book. I had just not given credit to the unique life experiences, and to that degree, I wasn't conscious of them.
Yeah.
I had to be taken back. My brother actually did a lot of the help of taking me back to things he remembered, in my childhood and later on, and the things that he saw, and especially the things that he saw he thought it was extraordinary that to me wasn't. Even like the pro cyclist thing. I quit that. I left it, walked away, and it just wasn't. There were people that I knew that didn't really know much about it. My younger kids didn't know much about it. I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I had to be taken back and go, that has value. And let's look at the aspects of that. And it's been through, again, taking my own experience and realizing, man, there's a lot of people like that. We're not conscious of our own stories for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So you're taking us back to audit those and give them gravity. And I appreciate you saying too, because when I first saw the chat or the segment in your book, I thought unique life experiences. I right away thought about achievements.
Yeah.
And you took back, the unique thing may be like that, my wife has depression and everything's going to hell in a handbasket. And so I started looking at, okay, so failures, tragedy. Well, you mentioned traumas a minute ago. Trauma is a unique life experience. Put that down. How I've experienced something. And if it didn't kill you, hopefully you've learned something, or you could look at that. You can help somebody in a way that I can't. I haven't experienced that trauma. So what I hear you saying, the answer to my question, and those who feel like they haven't had a whole lot of life experiences, is you're saying, no, you have. You just need to be cognizant of them.
Fair? Yeah, gather them. And they can be little moments too. Like I can remember 16 years old, Wednesday evenings, 8:30 at night, maybe 8:45, Rob McLeod, my high school hitting coach, I was taking hitting lessons in addition to playing baseball. He says, Mike, you got enough talent. Your hands are quick enough. You could play college ball, maybe in pro ball. I was like, huh. Then I ended up playing college baseball. I retired after my freshman year because my coach was a Nazi, not a real Nazi, but he acted like a Nazi.
Right.
And I was like, this is miserable. But that gave me confidence that I had the talent to be able to do something, and that helped shift my purpose. And then,
well, on that, then can we say too? I question: can we even be cognizant of our unique life experiences in a vacuum, in essence?
Yeah.
Because it has been through other people that have really helped me see me. I wasn't, and kind of that aspect of the things that are like our own brilliance or our own things. To us, it's just kind of normal. It's what we do, and it doesn't seem that significant to us. And I'm so aware of that in other people, more so than myself. And I'll look out and go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Your ability there. I mean, I've got kids, and oh my gosh, your artistic ability. And they'll just downplay it. It's the natural inclination. Go, it's just not that big a deal. And, maybe they're being humble or imposter syndrome or whatever. But I think a lot of times we just discount what you would pull out as a guide and say, no, that has significance. And the point being, we probably need help to pull it out.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Okay. And it can be a whisper that someone gives you of a word of affirmation that you're like, boom. How many, I can't remember who it was, but someone was sharing a story where someone said a word of kindness to someone as they were about to end their life that night. They had a gun. They had a loaded gun that they just bought earlier in the week. Someone said, thank you. You were doing a great job. Word of kindness. That person decided not to end their life. And now is like a renowned speaker and author and tells that story. Anyway, so just never know.
Your next part here, 4, values and passions. Well, first, I'm going to give your definition for everybody to hear on separating those two. You have passions, and you say it's what gets you excited, where you have natural interest and joy, something you could study and work at for a lifetime. Okay, so that's passions. Now, values, then you define, Mike, as they indicate what you will stand for and what you will stand against.
Mm-hmm.
That seems important too, because I assume you're differentiating those because we tend to throw them into the same pile and it's not fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Correct.
not relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're different because your passions are like, this just brings me joy. I'm curious about it. I want to learn more. Like I have a passion for sustainability. Now, does it fit? It doesn't fit my key relationships. I don't have key relationships in that area. And I don't have a defining life experiences other than my parents were big on recycling and not wasting things. So I did have a Tesla and I loved my Tesla. That was the best car I've ever had. And I'm getting another one. But so then you look at your values. What do you stand for? What do you stand against? So I make purchasing decisions partially informed by, those values of like, all right, we're going to get a green friendly car to help reduce CO2 emissions.
Right.
But then in my work, I stand for human potential and I will do anything and bend over backwards. And I will, my wife, when she was in depression, psilocybin was not legal in Tennessee. I found some psilocybin. I'm going to get her freaking healthy. I'm not waiting 5 or 2 years or whatever for Tennessee State to get their asses in line and understand the science, because government is a dinosaur industry and it moves slower.
Yeah.
All right. And I didn't have 2 or 5 or 10 more years to figure that out. So your passions and your values are going to shape your destiny. And they also create a great filter of like, one of my other values is working with good people doing good things. And so if I see someone that's like uses people, like I got out of a venture earlier, not too long ago, where the guy doesn't really value people. Mm-hmm. His culturally, that's not a thing he cares about. I'm like, no, this is misaligned. I love the product, loved the service, was misaligned with the values of the CEO. So it's not a long-term fit.
Give me your thoughts, Mike. And you mentioned earlier your own, let's call it your religious background, which I have a similar one. Because when you speak of values, I can hear a lot of religiosity just from my own,
Sure.
my own religious heritage, I would say. And so I was thinking about that a lot of people are going to throw their beliefs in there. Mm-hmm. And I thought, it doesn't totally line up. I can believe in something. I believe, the earth is round. I don't know how that's a value. Mm-hmm. I believe in Jesus. Okay. That kind of not dictates, but that would showcase seemingly a set of values, but it doesn't necessarily. And of course, that's the rub of a lot of, just to pick on religion, people who claim a belief, and you don't see the values that you would associate that happening in their lives. So maybe pull that apart so that we don't get confused with beliefs and values as being the same thing necessarily.
Yeah. Beliefs. Good question. Values. Beliefs they are reasonably to some extent intertwined, but there's beliefs sometimes about worldview. Like when we think of religion, Jesus is Lord or whatever, and so I don't want to do anything. Like sometimes Christians get themselves in a little bit of a box of like, Jesus, if it's not in the Bible, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Aspirin wasn't in the Bible, but freaking you got a headache, you take aspirin. Yeah. So I think but you value, and also your values of like, I want to feel good, will supersede. So will supersede whatever belief, if it's as strong enough, if the value is strong enough, stronger than your belief.
Well, gosh, you just mentioned something that's interesting. So you're in Tennessee and you decide, okay, I want my wife to have this treatment with psilocybin, which people, if you don't know what that is, mushrooms in essence, if you want to call it that. And you're saying it's not legal there. Well, okay, so where are you got morals, ethics, values, and you're saying, okay, I'm not trying to steal, cheat, or be illegal, but I'm going to do this. I have a value. It's going to supersede maybe something that normally I would say, no, I'm a law-abiding citizen. Fair?
Yeah. Like the value of love and me loving my wife and me wanting her well. I'm going to go to what is the most powerful tool. I needed the most powerful tool available for helping someone in a mental health crisis, fighting depression and PTSD. None of the other stuff really cures and cures. I mean cures, like symptom free, get out of that situation. We didn't want to just manage and cope, which is what the conventional diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression, complex PTSD. So my value for love and for human potential, my wife was being sapped of her potential. Mm-hmm. That supersedes my value around, because this is stronger value than abiding by the law. Because I value, hey, the law, if the law supports the people and justice and equality and all that, I will support it. But in that case, it was hindering our growth and hindering her healing. So I'm going to take that risk in that scenario.
Amidst this values and passions, we've hit on it, but I want you to hit again on, because it's powerful to me, of looking at the passions. I think that's where we tend to go, especially vocational. Look at the passions and go, come back to the curiosity. Am I innately curious about it? Because we talked about food. So food and drink, man, I just love loving it. I mean, right now, I know what we're having for dinner tonight. I know what I'm drinking with dinner. I love doing that. Am I innately curious? I'm actually not. I'm not. I kind of do the same things. I enjoy it, but I'm not coming up with new recipes. I'm not investigating new things. I'm not checking into the next cooking channel. It's not an innate curiosity. You use that again as a primary filter, especially to look at, what am I going to go do? What am I passionate about? And what do I want to go out and do to be paid for? That unpack the curiosity aspect a little bit, because to me, it feels like a holy grail of sorts. I mean, again, even looking at my kids and stuff and looking, here are their interests, here are their talents, whatever, but what do they continue to come back to? What's that? And I think we can all think about that, especially with other people. Go, man, anytime you're with Joe, he's ultimately going to come back to talking about X. Drives me crazy, man. He's always, well, that probably says a lot about it. Who's that? What's that out from you? So kind of go after how you root that out a little more.
Yeah. So, you're really gathering clues. Like, I'm watching Michael Jordan's Last Dance, right? And the competitive, he was driven to win. Competition was his highest value. That's why he would try and obliterate his friends and playing poker. He had no shame. He wanted to win at everything. Competition was his dominant thing. So, So what I find, my apologies. All right, let me just, that's back. All right. So in values and passions, what you end up seeing is man, they are there, but no one goes through a complete enough process, or very few people do. So in the passions and in the values part, I have people put down words that reflect who they are, reflect the core of their spiritual DNA, we'll call it, like love, human potential is one for me, discipline, growth, expansion, adventure. Adventure was a value for me. All right. So then you write those out, and then you start framing, creating, identifying phrases like, life is meant to be a beautiful adventure. So I want to create adventurous moments every day. So that becomes a value, that becomes a pillar of how I'm going to lead my life. The passion side is literally gathering clues about, I had another friend, her name's Erin. She was in a job that she made great money, but did not love. I was like, Erin, so what lit you up? What gave you inspiration when you were a kid? And when was the last time you felt really inspired? And she's like, well, when I was a teenager, I loved to paint. It's like, okay, well, what if you just started painting one day a week, one afternoon a month? Just get some paint and experimenting. Boom, she started painting. Then she started seeing, oh, I really enjoy this. And she's activating flow state. So she's releasing these positive neurochemical cocktails. What she do? Moves it to a day a week. Eventually, she reduces her job time to 3 days a week and is painting the rest of the time. She starts selling paintings, hundreds of dollars initially, then thousands of dollars. And now that's all she does full time. And she's right in her lane of genius. She makes beautiful artwork. Her paintings also become desk or tables. So she's not just paintings on a wall, right, but very artistic furniture that are one of a kind. So, but you got to if you look at anyone that is a genius at what they did, they usually were driven towards a curiosity, and that became a passion, and passion that became a purpose and a path.
Yeah.
So you have to like paying attention and allowing yourself to have passions on the side. Side passions are okay because they are often going to fuel something else. Like cycling was maybe a gateway for you into something deeper. Now you've had this curiosity, you're a driven individual, and you're now on this other deeper quest around relationships and psychology that you're exploring a little bit further.
Yeah.
So that might be a passion for a season, as passion you pick up for a bit, and then you put it back down. So that's okay.
Yeah. No, it's been interesting. I mean, you're kind of like you. And the next book on personal growth and change, I'm insatiable. To me, it's hope.
Yeah.
It's hopeful. I could do it on the side. My list of passions, whether it's food and drink or cycling, it just makes me it's my flow state. It makes me a better person, makes me a better dad, better friend,
100%.
better husband, all that jazz. But yeah, it's not the thing I want to do vocationally. And that's again, back to your analogy there with the painting. She could have done that and realized, oh my gosh, that just gives me joy and helps me be better at everything else. It's not what I want to do vocationally. Right. We got to root that out. Now you then list, so we just gave the 4 key areas here. And then you have, and I mentioned it earlier, genius blockers, these 3 core areas that are primary genius blockers. Number 1, lack of belief. And that's where I pulled out already. You have within that section, the Byron Katie and your own questions about looking at fear, but lack of belief. 2, fear and worry. And then 3, distraction. Lack of belief, you have that separated out because I almost put fear in that one, but you've got it separated out. So separate those out. You have lack of belief. You have the different, you have the different, or don't include in there. It's separate. Fear and worry. Unpack those 2.
Yeah. So lack of belief is just like you can be called like writing your book. Like, let's say, like Kristen Boss or myself, when it came out, I didn't know if I was good. I didn't know if I had something really to say to the world. So in the back of your mind, it's really lack of belief. I wasn't really that afraid. Now, there was parts of me that were afraid as I got closer. So the fear of like, oh, am I going to be embarrassed? Am I going to be ashamed? So it's 2 separate things happening. Do I have what it takes? And then if I do have what it takes, am I going to be embarrassed?
Yeah.
Am I going to be criticized? Am I whatever? And then fear, sometimes fear masquerades as procrastination. So we delay when we think or in stress. Say I'm a little stressed. I'm really busy right now. And it might be fear running in the background of what happens if I slow down. Oh, this is going to fall apart. This is going to fall apart. I'm going to embarrass myself. People are going to find out I'm not as smart and wonderful and amazing as they think I am. Or my business will fall apart if I don't work 80 hours a week, even though I'm doing busy work half the time. Right.
Then, okay, that's a lack of belief. Again, number 1, genius blocker, and then 2, fear and worry. Now 3, you have distraction, and I want you to hit on that. We hear that more and more. We know that, but do we look at it as you're saying? I mean, you're going after your zone of genius here. That distraction, is it just as simple as it just keeps you from doing the work to pursue it, or unpack it further?
Yeah, and it could be something like, all right, my distraction is like fantasy football. I like fantasy football, but I have to monitor myself. So it gives me pleasure. It's a joy for me. I won my league this year, which felt really good. First time in like 6 years, and but it's a little bit of a joy factor for me. But if I'm obsessed with it and it pulls me out of my zone of genius in my work, or these other things that are zones of excellence, like this opportunity evaluator, what you find is this other guy, Greg McGowan, wrote the book Essentialism, and basically he argues that as you grow, at the beginning you got to say yes to a lot of things to figure out who the heck you are, what on earth are you good at, but then as you grow, you get better and better at saying no. And your filter becomes crisper, tighter, more precise. And so like You don't want a heart surgeon giving advice to a neurosurgeon that much, nor do you want that heart surgeon doing pediatric, healthcare to your son.
Right.
You want them friggin' stay. You went through this. You went through the fellowship. You went through the extra training. And now you're a world-renowned heart surgeon. Stay in there, even if you're curious about gut health. Right? Learn about gut health, but that's a side passion, not the main thing. So
the distraction thing, and you just mentioned, I think even in there you mentioned something about addiction, and it reminded me. I think I got this, Mike, from something from Tim Ferriss. I can't remember actually, but it's out. This is by Paul Graham. In his book or essay, The Acceleration of Addictiveness. He says people commonly use the word procrastination, distraction, to describe what they do on the internet. It seems to me too mild to describe what's happening as merely not doing work. We don't call it procrastination when someone gets drunk instead of working. It's really gotten me to look at, okay, am I distracting myself or am I addicted to this activity that brings me, like fantasy football or something? I'm kind of addicted. I'm not procrastinating. I'm giving into an addiction. It's gotten me, it's good. This is fairly new concept. Got me looking at distraction because it's an issue for me. It takes me out of, I'm surprised sometimes. I love doing this. I want to be in flow. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's still hard work and I can fall over here and find myself screwing around with whatever.
Yeah. And I talk a little bit about in the book and in my private coaching where we want to find, you got about 3 to 4 hours a day of peak emotional energy. And for my high performer, my average high performer, we'll value, let's say we value that those 3 to 4 hours that like they're worth $3,000 an hour. Then you got your afternoon fade where you're just like barely, you need to be doing $100 an hour activities in that afternoon fade where you're just like barely, you're not as sharp, you're not as crisp, your willpower is down, all that. Well, you want to do your highest value, most aligned with your genius, highest impact, highest leverage activities in that 3 to 4 hours, which for most people is before noon. And then cut out, don't do the meetings. Like I had another CEO, David, he had so many meetings stacked in the first half of his day, and they were all administrative. So his company just had a record year. He has a film company. His company had a record year, but halfway through that first session, we sat down, we did a Zone of Genius Day. I'm like, David, let me guess here. And his company made more money than ever made before. But I could tell there's a lot of things off. Like, David, you haven't said this, but let me guess. You're looking for a way out of this company. You're wanting to burn the boats. You're miserable. And you're probably battling depression, aren't you? It's like, Mike, I just started taking antidepressants last month. And I want to escape. I hate it. I was like, all right. So here's what we're going to do. We start revamping his weekly schedule. We deleted about 75% of his meetings because he was in administrative meetings and he's a visionary. He needed to be doing visionary work, creating visionary meetings. And yes, he had some administrative stuff, but he could stack it in one day.
Yeah.
Right. And so instead of his whole week being administrative crap. And then we moved the majority of his meetings to the afternoon so he could have the mornings for visionary, creative things that could take his company to a $20 million a year company, which is where he wanted to go. Next month, we do the next session about a month later. He goes from miserable, burned out, ready to burn the ships to he's so inspired, he's on fire, he's feeling great about his company. And, we still had a little more work to do to refine the schedule, but he felt on fire because he was dialed in and he's working from his zone of genius, which meant he was activating flow state. And he was using his best hours for his most valuable activities. Yeah. And he felt great about it. And his most valuable activities are going to be different than your most valuable activities. Same for me, if we're business partners, because we all have different strengths and genius and responsibilities.
How often do you see that, or how prone are we to that, Mike, to say, to sometimes miss or sabotage our zone of genius? Not because we don't know what it is or we haven't even found it. Maybe we're even participating in it, but for lack of better, we screw it up because of poor structure, poor.
Lack of awareness, and I'll call it unconscious laziness, mental laziness. Okay. Meaning, here's what, I don't mean to be abrasive, but it's just like where we are a little careless because no one's taught us to be hyper careful about the best hours of our day.
Yeah.
Those best hours are really precious. And you got to use them hyper wisely. And most people screw them up. Even myself, I teach this stuff, and I like constantly have to watch myself not to schedule too many morning meetings.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to not have flow state hardly at all during the week. And I have certain days that I just don't do morning meetings usually. And I usually don't do meetings before noon, my time.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't either. Friday is my one day, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I generally have nothing scheduled before 1:00.
Yeah.
Because that's my creative time. And I also realize it takes me a long time to go down the rabbit hole. It may take me 3 hours of meandering around to do 45 minutes of really good quality work.
Yeah.
And I have to look at that sometimes and realize, because then I'll feel like I haven't done a full day's work. You know? Even as an entrepreneur, I get to set my own time, but I haven't really done a full day's work. And I try to stretch it out instead of looking back. You mentioned Richard Branson. He's my muse, where I remember something, this is a long time ago. And they said, he works about 20 minutes a day of real work. And he makes a couple, 3 really big decisions or takes action and then he's done. And I thought, I want to do that. I want to have such quality outcomes out of the action I take in a short amount of time that I don't have to. Now I can go ride and play with my kids and cook and whatnot. But even there, I had to shift my perspective of the culture that we're in. That's hard to battle.
Yeah. Yeah. This unconscious expectation that we work these 8 to 10 to 12-hour days. And it's really the most meaningful work might be in 1 to 2, 3 hours. And if you do that, then you have a lot more freedom on how you use the other elements.
So I want to anchor with, again, I like looking at I always want to find out, I don't know what I don't know. Where am I messing it up? So let's say that you have, you do the work, you find your zone of genius, you're able to participate in it. So you're there, you feel like you've arrived, but where do you see me, most commonly sabotage it? Do we overuse it? Do we, I still see people, I've experienced it myself where I feel like I'm in there, but I can still be at risk of burnout.
Sure.
Where are we most at risk? Where do we go awry?
Yeah. The majority of Westerners, we go really awry with exertion, overexertion, and under renewal. So almost a lot of my clients that I end up working with, especially women, men too, but women, they're on the edge of burnout. They're not respecting their biological cycles, like menstrual cycles. They're just grinding and gritting through work. And so in a book, Powerful Engagement, really shifted my life, where it talks about the 4 energy quadrants. And I talk a little bit about it, where you got mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. The physical is the foundation. So I literally have a client right now. She's physically very depleted, and we're rebooting her energy and her metabolic function so she can get back to peak performance. And she's also probably going to, frankly, detox and quit she's a corporate attorney, and she's got another law practice on the side that has replaced that income already. And she's burned out. She hates this job, is a total life suck for her. And so, you think we got to think of ourselves like a pro athlete building a sustainable career, like a LeBron James. Look, he's playing 21 years. Tom Brady played 22 years or whatever it was. So in those people who play and extend their career, they think sustainability. And a big part of sustainability is like you exert renewal, which in America, we want to just add. What else can I add to? What else more can I do? What else more can I become? What else more can I learn? When it might be the secret of high performance might be actually what you delete. Yeah. And then so I'm deleting I got to stop doing this. I got those things. And I delete toxic people. I delete toxic environments. I delete clients that are not of my highest and best. And then I also delete things that are energy zapping, or as many of them as possible. And then I focus on renewal. So like LeBron James, right after his games, he's in an ice bath, he's taking cold shower, whatever. He's renewing, he's replenishing his fluids. He's getting 10 hours of sleep. he's renewing himself so intentionally. That's why he's had a longer career than the vast majority of pro athletes and playing at a super high level every year. So really that renewal piece is massive for us. And that means replenishing the stores of energy and taking rest.
I want to hit on that renewal. So overexertion, you said. Yeah. I think everybody has conceives of overexertion, and most people are. We live in an overexerted culture, busy, go. Now, with renewal, though, I appreciate you using that word, renewal. I find culturally, and again, I'm prone to all of this too, that I can succumb to what I realize is just relief.
Yeah.
And not renewal. I feel like the day you get home, you kick the shoes off, you grab a beer and watch a show. That's relief. Yeah. Nobody ever gets up. Somebody said this. I didn't write this, but somebody said, you don't ever get up from 3 hours of watching games and eating chips and having a beer and go, oh my gosh, I feel great. I can conquer the world. It's good relief. And I love it. I mean, I'm nothing against, a bag of chips and watching something fun, but I realize it's not renewal. And I've got to be so much more intentional about. And it took me a while to get to know what really renews me, because it's not the same for everyone. But I imagine you find that, again, that aspect of we miss renewal. We think it's relief and it's not.
Yeah. 100%. That's a great illustration. So instead of relief, it might be you jump in a cryotherapy session, you get a great green smoothie, you replenish with some vitamins and electrolytes and minerals in a very proactive way. You rest, you get some, go on a beautiful walk with a friend or wife or whatever, and you leave your phone behind. Or like a lot of the people, I'm like, freaking do not check your work email and do not do work for at least one day a week. So Saturday, Sunday, whatever, literally zero work, not social media work, not texting, and do play, do really truly renewing things. That might be sunlight, play, vitality, great workout, spa day, whatever. And then take real vacations. Americans suck at taking real vacations, but at peak performers, I on my real estate team, I had a client or a partner. He took a real vacation. We had a hard and fast rule for our team members. You take real vacations when you unplug. He goes to Norway for like 10 days. We covered all his clients and all his emails. Comes back, he sells 10 houses in a week. I've never seen anyone sell that. I mean, he was just on fire. It was insane. You crushed it. So
I appreciate you saying that with vacations. I think in America, we do vacations like a marathon. Like I just went around a marathon. They come back exhausted. And I realize that if it's a family vacation, it's not renewal. It's great experience, great memories, but it's not renewal. And on this, you talked about on renewal, you have actually that in your book. You have a bonus section on routines and supplements and the things, which I really appreciate. I actually thought, I wish I'd done that in my book. So I want to give resources too on this. I mean, the book that we've been, all that I've gone through thus far with Mike is unpacking the book. And I probably unpacked about half at best of the book. Well, Genius Within. Go ahead.
You've done the best interview I've ever had done of unpacking the whole book. So I give you credit. Even though we didn't cover everything, you covered it.
Dude, we're only at an hour 45. I can do another hour 45. If we didn't have kids,
right?
We'll do that when you come out in person. Well, thank you. The book is The Genius Within, your natural pathway to impact, fulfillment, and wealth. And again, it does have, you've got, what do I do with my zone of genius? Bonus sections of genius routines and supplements. I looked at your list of books to read. I appreciate that. It does have the profiles we talked about and actually has the links for where to go take this. So it's it's really what I hope. And I've gotten some testimony that my book is too. It's not just a book, it's a workbook. It's something you actually work through. Now you also have, and I actually misquoted, you've got far more over on Instagram, which you can find Mike at the Mike Zeller, 625,000 followers over there, where you're going through this stuff daily. I love your clips. You've got a lot of your guests on your shows there. So it's another place that people can check in. And on that note, where else would you want people to go to engage with you, Mike?
Yeah, my YouTube, I'm really investing a lot of time into YouTube, and that's also found at the Mike Zeller as well. So feel free to find me over there. And then any of the other social media platforms, I'm right there. Would love to support and connect. And but I'm super passionate about obviously helping people unlock their genius. And so you can grab the book at geniuswithin.com, geniuswithinbook.com. That's where you can get a free copy. And then of course at Amazon as well.
Okay. Well, and I will say, maybe an upcoming episode about your guiding people with psychedelics. It's an area that I have continually been interested in and haven't dug into. And as you and I talked for an hour or more the other day about that, I've always wanted to experience it and have something to come back and give us a reason to do another show. So, man, thank you for the time. Thank you for the insight. I've got, I went through the book because it's just, I'm learning, man, and I'm gleaning. So thanks for your guidance and your genius. It's been a gift. It's been a gift, Mike. Thank you.
Likewise, Kevin. Thanks for your genius and just giving me this opportunity to you rock. And I can't wait to connect more.
Absolutely. Thank you. Friends, thank you for joining us on this journey, this drive. Again, that is Mike Zeller. You can find him anywhere. Just type in Mike Zeller. And you can get, again, I offered these at the beginning of the show. He's got a 14 free tools to rapidly rewire your nervous system. Go to neurorewiring.com and you can get a free copy of his book that was our muse today. Go to geniuswithinbook.com. As always, questions, thoughts, ideas on this, I am so honored to engage with you. So we're talking with each other. I'm not just talking to you. Email me, kmiller@kevinmiller.co.
Yeah.
I hope this episode helps you right here and today drive further and most of all, enjoy the ride. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. I look forward to meeting you in the Drive Tribe community for ongoing discussions about each episode. You can subscribe to the Drive Drop newsletter for weekly updates. Find it all at kevinmiller.co, along with all our social media and video clips. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further and enjoy the ride.